Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, well, they destroyed Ottawa, they destroyed Philadelphia, and then they blew it against Colorado with 14 seconds left to go in regulation. Colorado stole 2 points, and the Rangers didn't even get one. The silver lining is that this was their first regulation loss since the 7-4 game against Washington, which was 23 days ago. So that's progress.
Yeah, I mean, 10-game point streak is nothing to sneeze at when you've been as mediocre to outright bad as they've been. You know, the numbers here are reasonable. We talked about it last week. We'll continue to thread the narrative there that it's all in front of them. They've got 33 games remaining. The chunk of that is against teams they are in direct competition with. They see Boston a couple more times. They see the Islanders, Pittsburgh, Columbus. They see the Flyers one more time. A bulk of their schedule are effectively 4-point games where you can make real headway. You know, it only took 2 good weeks to go from 7th in the East to the first team out. It didn't take a lot to go right for them. And we'll talk about it. I went and looked through the numbers as far as trying to find what's different over the last 2-3 weeks as opposed to the season long. And there are some things in there that I think are sustainable, some things that aren't. The Borgen extension is news, but they're not playing miserable hockey. It's not pretty. It is very sloppy. It is very disorganized. And as much as the narrative within 5 minutes of the Borgen extension going out that the Rangers like the quiet he's brought to the defense, he's also given 2 goals away in the last week. You know, the game winner against Colorado, and then I think it was Suzuki against Montreal, where he just passed it directly to Nick Suzuki in the slot, who scored a goal. So we're making progress, you know. But and one of my friends said this about Borgen, and I want to give Chris credit for this. He said after watching Trouba for the last 3 years, watching Will Borgen is like seeing Chris Tanev on the Rangers. That's how good Borgen looks in relation to Jacob Trouba.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of the perspective you have to have right now. When you go 5-15 over the course of a month and a half, to go 6-3-1, I mean 6-1-3, you take that, man.
Sure.
Not asking a lot here. I'm not saying go win the division. I'm not saying even make the playoffs. I'm saying keep these games interesting. Try and make some progress. That's really all I'm asking for here.
This has been fun comparatively to the train wreck debacle that we've been witnessing the past 2 months. Like this 11-game stretch, well, 10, I guess, because that regulation loss was heartbreaking and not very fun to watch. But
in front of the kids too, on Kids Day.
On Kids Day, you got to break their hearts early, Nick, because you set them up. You set them up so that they are used to it when they are adults. This is like honestly, good job parenting by the Rangers. Genuinely, this is the greatest spin zone of all time. But the Rangers did a great job by parenting these kids to make them understand that failure will come by being a sports fan. So get used to it now, because you're gonna have a lifetime of this. But yeah, I like this is a lot better, and the play still isn't there. It's not pretty. It's not firing on all cylinders the way that we've seen this core play. It's not top tier. It's not at the echelon where we want to see them. I would have to think it's not where they want to be either. But comparatively to the dumpster fire, this is
December,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Like they were playing so miserably bad in November and December that I'll take anything, and this is anything. Like the 6-1-3 in the last 11 games is solid for just about anybody. So I'll take the setting day of the week, and yeah, the game against Colorado was not pretty at all. The multiple goals, like the one thing I'll give the Rangers credit for in that game in particular is if this was even a month ago, they lose that 5-0. They lose that maybe 6. Like that could have been a blowout 4 weeks ago. But you know what? Like they at least they fell behind by 2 goals twice. They came back. They were actually, they were generating offense. Colorado was giving up a lot too. Yeah. Like multiple odd man rushes, defensive breakdowns. The Rangers created offense, which is something that 6 weeks ago that was not happening at all, non-existent, period. So they're not there yet. But that game, even with the late heartbreaking goal aside, at least shows that they are in the right direction of getting back to the kind of normal that we have expected from this team for the past few years.
So I think that's a good question. You know, we talked a lot over the course of the last month and a half or so of what's their new normal, you know, and trying to find what their new lineup looks like. And they've found two pairs they like reasonably so. I'm still pretty convinced Ryan Lindgren's going in a pump and dump, and that's why they continue to play him with Fox to try and massage his numbers to look a little more passable to other teams.
If
But
Will Borgen got an extension and Ryan Lindgren has not, that tells you everything you need to know about
yes,
the future of Ryan Lindgren as a New York Ranger.
yes, his name has been out there as far as the JT Miller stuff, which again, you know, the nothing ever happens meme. We're on week like 4 of nothing ever happens, but
we're in year 3, Nick. We are in year 3 with JT Miller to the Rangers. This is not
nothing ever happens.
Yeah.
What's the Stalin quote? There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. That's kind of what we're looking at here when it comes to the floodgates opening. I have a lot of stuff on Borgen. The contract is very interesting. And last week, we talked about the idea of, can the Rangers not miss the forest for the trees? Can they look at the team and acknowledge where they're at? Because when you watch on a nightly basis, this is very much as thrown together as it gets. Zibanejad is almost entirely a non-factor as far as offensive creation. You know, I saw someone tweet earlier that Cooley was second or third on the team in points before he started playing with Zibanejad, and now he has a negative goal differential in the 3 weeks he's been playing with Zibanejad. You're still really trying anything to manufacture offense. The power play getting hot is probably the single biggest driver of success over the last 2 weeks. They've scored on 34.8% of their power plays over the last 10 games. That'll make up the deficits and the issues they've had, because season long, they're still below league average on the power play, which, as we know, has been a calling card of this group for 3.5 seasons now. Is they get 2 at evens, and they can usually get 1 more on the power play. And that, in conjunction with strong goaltending and good penalty kill, is typically enough. And real quick, before we move on to talking about Borgen, the Rantanen trade, I saw more than one person saying the goalie is going to get 12.5 million. He gives up 5 goals on 21 shots. He went 2 games without giving up a goal. Like, can we have some perspective? And this is the problem with,
also, like, I don't know what would Dominik Hasek do in some of those goals? Like, the argument, like, people that make that argument just hate Igor. It's just all it comes down to.
And it's fascinating to me because these same people who think that Shesterkin is overpaid are excited about paying Will Borgen $4.5 million for the next 5 years. I fundamentally do not get how you could be opposed to the Shesterkin contract, which is entirely the only reason you can say the Rangers have a window of contention. You give this team league average goaltending, they are a bottom 10 team in the NHL.
The idea of, hey, you should pay your best players the most amount of money, for some reason doesn't.
Oh, we're going to make fun of the Avalanche for that, too. Don't get me wrong. We're going to get there. We're going to get there as far as the
but also, like, Igor is one of, you know, with Fox and these guys, like, the backbone of this team. If you do not pay him, and you let him walk, and someone else comes in who is not Igor Shesterkin, this team is fundamentally so much worse that you could pay Igor $15 million, it'd still be worth it. That's how much he means to this team, and that's how good he is. So the fact that people are poo-pooing on Shesterkin's contract, but are like, yeah, Will Borgen, $4 million for 5 years. And again, like, I tweeted this when the Borgen extension first came through, and I hope I'm wrong about this. Like, I really hope that my take about Will Borgen is wrong, and I get on freezing cold takes, and, you know, everybody clowns on me for this. But, like, this man had a 17-game sample size with the Rangers. He better than he was in Seattle. Sure, I'll give him that. And he wasn't awful, but, like, 5 years after 17 games.
Okay, so let's do Borgen now. Let's do Borgen now because there's a lot to unpack here. I'll circle back around on the Shesterkin point, but I did go and do some research. I wanted to. The big thing for me, and the reason why I am so apprehensive to this, and why I am fundamentally disaligned with how NHL general managers approach this. I made this comparison last week, and I'm going to make it again. The Rangers just got out of one bad contract in Trouba. To instantly go out and give a deal where the justification is they can get out of it in 2 years is what we've been doing for a decade.
We've been doing this our entire lives, Nick.
Every single time they give out a contract of meh quality to an average to slightly above average player, the instant justification is the cap is going up. Remember when we said that when they gave Panarin and Trouba 20 million combined, and then there was a fucking pandemic that shut down the world for a year and a half? Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. As much as Gary and Bill Daly are puffing their chests out, we think we're going to 97.5 in 2 years. I will believe it when I see it. Somehow one of the 32 teams is going to lose the lease on their arena and have to play in a public park, and they're only going to be able to sell 500 tickets a year. And that's going to torpedo the revenues because this is a gate league. If people stop showing up in a market, which, there are highs and lows in every market, eventually that has a trickle-down effect. And of course, the NHL always has optimism in their forecasts. We are a decade removed from the NHL salary cap being $42.5 million. You know what the NBA salary cap was in 2012? $150 million. We are talking about very, 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 very different worlds. And for the Rangers to give Will Borgen this big of an extension in terms of term, and look, Borgen, the player, go back and watch the breakdown I did the day after they acquired him. I understand what the Rangers see. He's an above average, borderline elite skater for a defenseman. He's got above average size. He blocks a lot of shots. He's got a decent reach. There are no puck skills to speak of. He shoots the puck an awful lot for somebody who doesn't score. He's an imperfect understanding of what a defensive defenseman is. I still think about watching the Rangers on NBCSN a decade ago, where Mike Milbury and Keith Jones would be talking about how great defensive defensemen are. And defensive defenseman is code for they don't put up any points and they block a lot of shots. That's what defensive defenseman means. You know what a good defensive defenseman looks like? Someone like Jacob Slavin, where the other team just doesn't get the puck. Somebody like Gus Forsling or Mackenzie Weegar or Chris Tanev, someone who actively prevents the other team from getting to defense in the first place, which actively drives possession. Now, I don't think Borgen is bad. I think he is an average NHL defenseman. There are multiple layers to why I think this is a bad idea. Number one, most importantly, I don't think Will Borgen cracks a top 4 on a team that's Stanley Cup good. I don't think he's that good. Fundamentally, if you compare him to the top 4s of Florida, Vegas, Colorado, Tampa Bay, even St. Louis, Washington, I don't think this Will Borgen, as he sits here right now, is good enough to crack the top 4 of any of those teams. So you're telling me we're going to play this guy on our third pair and we have to pay him $4.5 million a year for 5 years for a third pair guy. And lest we forget, and look, if they're going to do we're playing Braden Schneider on the left going forward, that's a different conversation. You traded up and took Braden Schneider 20th overall. You gave him a million chances to figure it out. You traded Nils Lundqvist to accommodate him, to make him your guy. And you're still not sure if Braden Schneider's actually that good, like 5 years into this NHL experience. And you're playing Will Borgen, who you got 17 games ago, more minutes than the guy you took 20th overall. That's another layer to this is, so you're either telling me you're playing Schneider on the left, which he's not even great on the right. So I don't know if we can play him on the left to begin with. Number two, you're telling me, well, we took him 20th overall because X, Y, and Z, but things are different now because we've liked Will Borgen since his draft year. And the big thing for me, that's crazy. Will Borgen was drafted when Obama was president, and he has played 260 NHL games. And people will say, well, he was in college for 3 years, and he was in the AHL. He doesn't have as many miles. You guys, yes, he does not have as many miles as a lot of the contemporaries that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But what about how he's played to this point in his NHL career lead you to believe there's anything more to squeeze out of him? You know, how is somebody who's 28 years old going to improve even more than marginally? That's just not how sports work. You know, you more or less physically peak in your late 20s to your early 30s. It irks me because this is another. Ultimately, this comes down to culture war bullshit. If you think the team knows what it's doing, you agree with the extension. If you're skeptical of authority, you don't. It's mind-boggling to me that
Right.
that people are going to the mat defending a contract for a guy who's been on the team for a week and a half.
Right.
Like Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad, I have like their pictures on milk cartons, on Photoshops, on Twitter every single game. And they've been here, you know, Zibanejad's been here 7 years, Kreider's been here a decade. And more people are more defensive of Borgen, who's been fine for 3 weeks. And that's the bar to have shooters now? What happened to the game I love,
man? It's very strange. This whole situation has been so strange because, like,
and we didn't even talk about the capo of it all either.
Yeah, no, Capo has been fantastic for Seattle, but you know, if we say that, we might get arrested by, you know, by those people that are also defending Will Borgen. And again, like, it's one of those situations where I would love nothing more than for Will Borgen to turn into a NARS defenseman. Like, I want Will Borgen to wake up today and say, you know what, I could be better. And then he's just gonna play like Adam Fox. That would be terrific. Like, I'm rooting for Will Borgen to be a great player. Like, and I feel like so are you, Nick. Like, we're on the same page here.
Yeah,
it's like
go watch the breakdown. I did an hour talking about Will Borgen on the Kraken and saying, I see the traits. The traits are there. The production isn't, but the traits are.
We want Will Borgen to be the best version of Will Borgen that he can be on this team. That's what we're rooting for. That's what hopefully everyone's rooting for if you're a Rangers fan. But ultimately, it's this. So, and you mentioned a second ago, you clearly don't have confidence in Braden Schneider, who, like you said, you know, they drafted 20th overall, gave a boatload of opportunities to, and created space for him, and they're still kind of like, can he do this? Can he not? Which is not a good sign for anybody, particularly one that you drafted in the first round and you traded to get. Also, Zach Jones is dead, I guess.
Yeah, like, he's done. He's not getting another
chance. He's not playing ever, so he
can get in over Vakanainen, who's barely an NHLer.
Why is Vakanainen getting minutes over Zach Jones? Like, that's the one question that I would love to get answered, is like, Vakanainen, there's no other way for me to put this. It doesn't sound great, but Vakanainen was essentially a throw-in.
Yeah.
By Anaheim.
He was a guy with a pulse that could play defense.
Like, this is not to disparage Vakanainen, but like, in the trade itself, Vakanainen was not the primary focus of that deal. Anaheim did that to move a contract, to get a little bit of money out so that they could acquire the entirety of Trouba's contract for reasons. Vakanainen was not somebody the Rangers were salivating over. So the idea that Vakanainen continues to get ice time while Zach Jones sits in the press box eating pretzels and doing nothing, I fundamentally can understand that from a coaching perspective, but also a GM perspective. Like, if you want Zach Jones gone, right? Like, let's say you're Chris Drury and you want to trade Zach Jones, shouldn't you play him to get GMs to watch him? Because Zach, I don't know why I called you Zach. Nick, GMs have a very short-term attention span, where the idea is that if you put a player on the ice for them to watch as the game goes on, they remember them, right? If Zach Jones is sitting in the press box for 3 weeks, GMs will forget that Zach Jones is a hockey player. That's the way the NHL works for some reason. So if you are doing this with Ryan Lindgren, who you would have to imagine are going to trade, because again, there's no extension. You gave Will Borgen one, but not Ryan Lindgren one, which tells me Ryan Lindgren's on the way out. So if the justification for playing Ryan Lindgren top 2 minutes with Adam Fox, for reasons, again, is because you want other teams to watch him play, which not a good thing, but that's neither here nor there. and drive up his trade value, how are you not doing the same thing with Zach Jones? Instead of, like, why are you playing Vaakanainen all these games instead of Zach Jones if you want to trade Zach Jones? His value goes down by the game. Because if you trust him so little that you're not even rotating him in with somebody that you just got 2 months ago who is probably not even going to be on the team next year, then what's the point of all this? And these are the little things that just pile up at the end of the day. It might not seem like a big thing. Who cares if Vaakanainen's playing over Zach Jones? It doesn't, like, none of these things matter. You're overreacting. You're just being negative. It's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but avalanches don't just happen. Like, little things pile up, they add together, and that's what causes the snow to fall down. All of these little things might not matter to you, the person that that is going to fight us for the sake of fighting us. But if you're a general manager, these are the things that you should be thinking about. These are the things that you should be caring about. So the fact that this is a very kind of wishy-washy, player A does this, but player B doesn't get this same treatment, is all just very strange to me.
So there are two parts to this. So number one, this ultimately speaks to the larger problem the Rangers have as far as identifying defensive talent, because they still view it through the lens of defensive defensemen and offensive defensemen as opposed to just defensemen. When you watch Zach Jones, we know he's not good in front of the net. We know he's going to struggle to break out against teams that forecheck heavily because he's on the smaller side, because he's more offensively inclined. But at the same time, you're willing to make offensive and defensive concessions at various points of your lineup because you have to. Certain guys are only good at certain things. And I understand from a team perspective why they're playing Lindgren, why they're playing Vaakanainen. The supposed defensive defenseman, the grit, the blocking shots, the penalty killing. I get it. The problem is that when you do these little things, like you said, year over year, they start to accumulate. It's not just this year. It's not last year. It is over time. And it's not just Drury's regime. It's the regime before that and the regime before that. You need to have a consistent ideological output as far as giving guys opportunities. And the loyalty to Borgen, and look, I don't think they gave him the contract purely out of like spite for, we're happy we traded Kakko. I don't think that's why they gave him the extension.
I think that would be a silly reason.
I definitely think that was something that came up in Chris Drury's mind before doing this, because when you look at it, and I was having this conversation with somebody.
You think he's that vindictive that
yes,
that's on his
this
mind?
This is the guy who won't let them show Jim Ramsey on TV when the Canadians are here. Right? This is the guy who has systematically weeded people out of the front office he perceived as being disloyal.
Also, hey, like Larry or somebody, does anybody want to write a story about what happened? Or like,
if you ask The Athletic, the reason the Rangers lost to the Avalanche yesterday is that Jim Ramsey wasn't on the bench to yell 30.
Also, the funniest thing about all that is that Shesterkin was hitting.
He did what he was supposed to do. He did. Go watch the replay. You can hear the stick being.
You can hear very clearly. You can hear the stick. Yeah. You don't need Jim Ramsey yelling at you when Shesterkin's doing it.
They just wanted to get that anecdote in there.
Dude,
and to bring it around a second time later in the story is crazy to me. Like, I'm sorry, I'm making a ruling. If you want to reference Jim Ramsey not being here as a problem, you have to find out why he's not here. Yeah. And you can't just say MSG policy is to not comment on this. There are more than just the MSG side of things. You're going to tell me.
Go talk to Jim Ramsey. He's not a part of MSG. Go ask him.
You're going to tell me in the infinite web of hockey insiders who all play telephone and gossip every day. All they do is gossip all day long on podcasts, on TV, in written columns. All they do is gossip all day long, to the point that some of them get things wrong. We started out last Friday. Oh, Taylor Hall's going to Carolina. Oh, anything else, guys? Like, how I am mystified by how everybody can get transaction news 2 minutes before it happens or after the fact entirely, but we can't get any actual
quote
news.
Tweet.
We can't get any actual news. You can't tell me why Chris Drury is systemically weeding people out of the organization he doesn't like. I fundamentally am flabbergasted that, well, if Jim Ramsey's not here, it's such a problem. Well, guys, why isn't Jim Ramsey here? Can we get an answer on that? And don't tell me MSG policy, and don't tell me, well, Jim Ramsey declined to comment. There is an infinite web of people in the hockey landscape that both work in organizations around the game and work for media organizations. Someone can find this out. It's not just oh, that's it, throw your hands up. I remember in college.
I really want to highlight this comment, by the way. I just think it's really funny.
It's all they do.
So Adele Adele Reynolds on YouTube. Ironic Nick saying all they do is gossip. I just objectively think I think that's a hilarious comment to make. I don't even know what that means.
So I'm going to assume that means that because we talk about this, we are technically gossiping because we are fueling into the conjecture. That it's a reasonable critique.
All we want to do is find out what happened.
Yeah, man.
We just don't have the connections to find out what happened. We're not the biggest NHL insiders, on the planet. Like Friedman should know, Kevin Weeks should know.
No, I'm just gonna tweet an emoji and some eyes
and a picture of a bridge. Like my man's posted the eyes emoji, a picture of the Pittsburgh Bridge, and then just called it a day, brother. I like Weeksy a lot for what it's worth. Like I think Kevin Weeks has good analysis. I think he's a good guy, brother. Please stop engagement farming. Please, I'm begging.
Okay, so on Borgen, I wanted to pull up two things. Number one, I want to start here. Where is okay? So this spreadsheet you're looking at, if this works, okay. These are all of the unrestricted free agent defensemen this upcoming summer. Will Borgen is the one on the Rangers, obviously. But when you look at Borgen in comparison to the other unrestricted free agents, one thing's going to jump out in particular. Number one, he's already 28 years old. He has 265 NHL games played. He was drafted 10 years ago. You compare the games played to the contemporaries. Ekblad has been in the NHL since he was drafted. He's first overall. That's a little bit different. I understand. Provorov, who started late. Petrie is 37. That's not a fair comp. But Gavrikov doesn't come over till he's like 25, and he's got more games played than Borgen. Pionk, who is an undrafted free agent, has almost twice as many games
Rangers
played.
Legend.
Chikrin, who's only 26, has almost twice as many games played. Ryan Lindgren, who again played 2 years of college hockey, and he played a half season in the AHL, and he's 3 years younger, and he's got more than 100 games more. Alec Martinez, David Savard, those guys a lot longer in the NHL. You could say the same thing for Cody Ceci, same thing for Brian Dumoulin. Henry Jokiharju has played 120 more games, and he's 3 years younger. Ian Cole, not as fair. Moda, Grzelcyk, Ruda. But the big point here, why are you, as a team that is ostensibly fancying itself a Stanley Cup contender, so committed to a guy who couldn't get in the lineup for Seattle, who is not a good team? Objectively, Borgen requested a trade from Seattle because he wasn't playing consistently enough this year. And this is a guy you think is good enough to play for you, who's supposed to be a cup contender? The fit isn't really the question. The talent isn't the question. I think so often we get so insular and so siloed in just the Rangers of it all. You have to compare what the Rangers are doing and their talent to their opponents. It's not just, oh, we like the talent, these guys are good. It's great we like them and you like their talent. Are they good enough to beat Florida? Could Will Borgen play in the Panthers top 4? Could he play in the Hurricanes top 4, the Devils top 4, the Capitals top 4? Could he get in the Oilers top 4, the Wild top 4, the Stars, the Kings? It's great they like him. It's great they think he's good. Would he play on a better team? Would he play the role they're going to play him in on a better team? This gets back to stuff we've been talking about for a decade. On a cup contender, 2014 Derek Stepan is probably a second or a third line center, but on those Rangers, he was a first line center. You get to the Zibanejad and Kreider of it all, where, yeah, they have decent counting stats. On a cup contender, they're second liners, not on the Rangers, they're not. But that's because the Rangers have a different roster construction where it's about the goaltending, it's about the defense and the special teams. But
Is
decreases
it
your.
about the defense? That, by the way, the Rangers all quarter century team came out, and on the second pair,
It
on the
was
second
Girardi and
team, it's
Stahl, yeah.
Girardi Stahl, and I quote tweeted that and said, "Oh, look, Girardi Stahl is gonna traumatize another Hall of Fame Rangers goalie because Shesterkin was also on that team." Like that, I understand people like Girardi and Stahl. Go watch them play. Go watch the tape. It is not pretty. The fact that those two are on the All Rangers team for the past 25 years, that just highlights to you, Jesus, the Rangers don't know what a good defenseman is. They
No,
don't. They haven't known for the past 25 years, and they still don't know. Adam Fox is a Ranger because he's a Rangers fan. And that's why the Rangers knew he was good. They didn't know he was this good, and they
yeah.
traded for him because he's a Ranger. Like, obviously, that's over exaggeration that they traded for him because he's a Rangers fan. That's kind of silly, but like, he's only here because he's a Rangers fan. Like, he could have signed in Carolina. He could have signed in Calgary, right? Like, he could have signed in all these places. He forced his way here, and he's a Norris winning defenseman on the Rangers, not because the Rangers discovered he could be this way, but because he forced his way here. Like, the Rangers don't know what a real good defenseman looks like, and they continue to not know. And again, like, Will Borgen could be good. I hope he is. But giving Will Borgen $4 million for 5 years, when, like you said, he's not a top four defenseman on a cup contending team, screams to me like, dog, do you know what a real top four looks like?
No,
Because
they
I don't
don't.
think you do.
No, they don't. I mean, you saw it in the playoffs last year. The insistence on keeping Trouba in the lineup when he was the worst defenseman on the team in the playoffs against Carolina and against Florida, that is an example
Oh,
of,
but he
well,
was injured, Dick. Oh, he was injured. Oh, wait. No. Actually, sources say that Jacob Trouba in the breakup day said he was healthy. So, well.
yeah, again, nonsense.
Mm.
Next up, I wanted to highlight this. This is Borgen with Keandre Miller, and excuse me, this is Miller with Borgen and Keandre Miller without Borgen. There's not huge discrepancies here. The biggest difference is this: the fact that they're playing a bit better low event hockey, about one fewer high danger chance against, about 0.05 expected goals against. They're getting slightly better shooting percentage. They're getting slightly better goaltending. But by and large, the difference here is that they're playing slightly lower event hockey, 3.35 to 3 goals against per 60. The expected goals are a little bit better. The high danger against is a little bit better. But like the idea that's permeating out there that Will Borgen has calmed the defense, I think is misleading. I think they're playing better overall defense, but not significantly to the point where it's noticeable. They still stink defensively. I mean, you watch the and look, people will say, "Well, Colorado's good." You know who you play in the playoffs, right? It's other good teams, right? You're not playing.
Yeah.
You're not playing the Sabres in round one. You're going to be looking down the barrel at the Devils, Carolina, or Florida. Those teams are all pretty good, varying degrees of pretty good, and the Rangers are okay. When you are okay, you need to be more than okay. And the one last thing I want to hit on, and we can tie Borgen into this, is the Rangers results over the last 10 in comparison to their season long. So if you're colorblind, red, green colorblind, this probably isn't going to work great for you. So I'll be sure to tweet this without the colors, but for YouTube, it's a little bit easier to see the differences. So where you see red, they are worse or even with what they are season long over the last 10. And what you see in green is better than what they are season long. So chances, negligible difference. We're talking about a half of a scoring chance percentage wise. Chances for, we're talking about one chance less. We're talking about less than a whole chance against less. The goal split is better. They are generating fewer goals for per 60 by 0.04, relatively insignificant.
I wonder what these numbers would look like if you, I mean, like, this is kind of silly, but if you remove the beginning run where
Yeah,
they looked
the,
really
the
good.
first 10, and you went, yeah, you could do. I could do something like
I
that
wonder
after
what the
that.
splits would look like
I could do
there.
that after the show, but as you go along here, you slightly better on the expected goals, but they're generating fewer expected goals, which weaves part of a coherent narrative. They're generating a little bit less offense, but they're also conceding a bit less defensively, which does matter. A quarter of an expected goal doesn't sound like a lot, but it is over the course of multiple games. A quarter of an expected goal is 1 goal every 4th game. The high danger chances against, 3 fewer per game, that's nothing to
That's a
sneeze
lot.
at.
Yeah.
3 fewer is nothing to sneeze at. But this is really what it gets down to for me. What we would call the luck stats is really the big swing here. So on the entire season, they're 26 for 128 on the power play. They only have 26 power play goals through the end of January, effectively. Then you look at just the last 10 games, 8 for 23, like we said, almost 35% on the power play for the year, 15% better than the year. Their 5-on-5 save percentage over the last 10 games is 14% better. Their save percentage in all situations is 10% better. Their 5-on-5 shooting percentage is 0.5% better. And their shooting percentage in all situations is 2% better. So I am not prepared to say that the last 10 games are reflective of huge improvement. I think a lot of it has just been special teams and goaltending, which, that's kind of the Rangers' MO. So like we said before, that's kind of a good sign that they're at least getting back to what they are good at. But to truly make progress, where I would feel like they turned a corner, I would need to see the rate stats and I would need to see the 5-on-5 numbers be a bit more consistent for longer. The splits they have there, if they could maintain that for the final 33 games, that'd be enough to make the playoffs. If they are able to play what they are 5-on-5, and the problem is, they're not going to have a 35% power play for the final 33 games. They're not.
And also, you can't back on the playoffs either.
No, we're not even talking about the playoffs. Just talking about making the playoffs for the purpose, because I think the issues are too deep for them to really make a run this year, barring Shesterkin going like full 2011 Tim Thomas. Like that's basically what it would take here, like 945 save for this iteration of the Rangers to make real noise. But if you're going to say they're going to have an above average power play the rest of the way, we'll say 23, 24%. They still probably need to be a bit better defensively, and they need to score more. They absolutely need to score more. And how are you going to manufacture more offense? If you're watching on a nightly basis the volume of empty possessions where the puck gets in the offensive zone and nothing happens, it's a testament to just keeping things simple that the fourth lines had a nice week and a half, 2 weeks, where Sam Carrick, Rempe, and Edstrom are working. And if you missed it, real quick, the one thing I have to do it for this season, but last year, the big difference when Rempe was and wasn't in the lineup, and the question I asked was, is there anything, statistics wise, is there anything different when he is or isn't in the lineup? Last year, they got about a power play and a half more per game in the games he was in the lineup, which is a testament to the officials managing the game, being a little more inclined to call things because he's out there. So I have to do that for this year, but I'll be curious to see if that's an alignment. If there's more power
and
play,
also he's been a positive offensive contributor the last few games as well, which like is great. And I think it was Sam or maybe it was Joe on the broadcast. They were talking about how Rempe was, getting more ice time with the skills coach and really like hammering away at some of his deficiencies, which is great. Like that's what we want.
He's still young enough where he has a little bit of time. He's only, I think, 23. So, like, he's not finished.
Isn't 21?
I think he turned 22 this year. I'm pretty sure he's 22. But neither here nor there. Yeah, 22 and 212 days. But as far as getting more out of him, I mean, that almost certainly means, and we know that they've basically been like, we'll take anything if you want Jimmy Vesey for 3 months now. And very clearly, there's not a lot of interest out there. And I think if it's weird, and I think this is what I want to tie a bow on the episode talking about. I can't tell you if the Rangers think they're good or not, because the way they're managing the lineup in some cases, like Rempe playing every game over Vesey, would tell you, well, if they're focusing on his development and worrying about him getting ice time, that would lead me to believe that they're probably going to sell some guys off, because if they were really trying to grind it out, we would see what we saw 3 years ago, where Barclay Goodrow was playing on the second line with Panarin and Ryan Strome, because we can't take risks. We got to win every single game. And instead, we're not playing Jimmy Vesey. We're playing Matt Rempe. We're allowing him to take change. And look, he still only has 2 games over 10 minutes in his entire career. There's a lot of work to be done. But the fact he's staying in the lineup is curious to me. Same
and
thing.
showing improvement as
Yeah,
well,
it's
which is
showing improvement
important.
as well. He's definitely more engaged. And I think they definitely have a keeper in Edstrom. I think Edstrom is
Yes.
definitely
Yeah.
a long-term building block there
Yeah.
to orient that fourth line around. But the way they're handling Lindgren,
it's really funny, by the way. And I don't mean it's really funny that Edstrom, Carrick, and Matt Rempe, out of seemingly thin air, is like the best fourth line in hockey now for like the past 2 weeks. Like out of literally nowhere. Like Matt Rempe went from not playing to being from being a complete non-factor to now all of a sudden like he's contributing offensively. Sam Carrick is a 50 goal scorer, and Adam Edstrom is the best fourth line two-way player in the history of the NHL. This is insane. Like this is great.
it helps. It reduces the load. I mean, that was a consistent theme in the playoffs last year. As the offense dried up, it was the fourth line that was making things happen the most consistently because they were just taking the puck to the net. And that matters when you can send your fourth line out there and not just spend those 45 seconds holding on to your butt, hoping they don't give up a goal again. So that is something. But like to the bigger point, Rempe staying in the lineup, Lindgren being on the first pair, Borgen getting an extension as opposed to waiting a little bit longer. All of this is very incongruent. They don't line up with each other as far as like the outlook of the team. Because all logic, and I said this last week, and I've definitely had my fair share of arguments with people about this. I think if you're making the playoffs this year, your best case is you probably lose in the second round just because the 5-on-5 offense isn't there and the special teams aren't as good as they've been the last few years. So even if you make the playoffs, you go out in the first or the second round. Where does that leave you in the summer? And look, you can talk about JT Miller all you want, sure, whatever. Are you really going to build a team around 3 centers who are 32 years old and Panarin and Kreider? Like that doesn't align with contender status. It doesn't. You can say it, but like, yeah, on paper, it's not bad. But when in practice, in going out there and playing the games, which of those 3 is playing third line minutes? Who of Zibanejad, Trocheck, and JT Miller is playing third line minutes? And look, if you can get
I would hope
Zibanejad,
it's Zibanejad.
if you can get Zibanejad to go the other way in a trade, whether it's a 3-way for Miller or something, whatever, great. But again, you're still building the team around 2 32-year-olds in Miller and Trocheck who play a physical style, who are old. You cannot bank on those guys being 1 and 2 Cs for the remainder of the duration of that contract, which this brings us to the Mikko Rantanen conversation and the larger NHL economic conversation at large. We're going to see really quickly whether this is a preemptive, the NHL owners really are this cheap and they just don't want to pay their star players as much as star players should be paid, or if this is uniquely a Colorado conundrum, because you never win this trade. It is impossible to win the trading the superstar for parts. And look, I like Jack Drury. I like Marty Necas. I like Necas more than a lot
They
of
look
people.
good.
They
By the
definitely
way,
look good.
yesterday.
They fit what Colorado wants to do.
And Colorado desperately needed the depth.
Yes.
Desperately.
Yes.
Like Mikko Rantanen is a phenomenal player, and Colorado will miss him dearly, especially guys like McKinnon, who were very not happy, right? Obviously, like Rantanen was somebody that McKinnon really, liked off the ice, on the ice. They were friends. So the fact that Rantanen isn't there anymore is going to hurt McKinnon in the short term. They've so desperately needed actual human beings in the lineup besides the top line, and that's what they got. They weren't going to pay Rantanen. He was going to ask for too much. That's what the rumors and this quote unquote sources are all saying, that he was going to ask for too much, and if Colorado paid him, then they would be signing guys like us off the street to fill out the roster.
Maybe they shouldn't have paid Ross Colton and Miles Wood, but again, this is where we get to the same thing with the Rangers.
Yep.
You can tell me, they're going to go after Eichel, McDavid, or Rantanen over the next year and a half. How are you going to do that?
With what money?
Literally with what money? And but the salary cap's going up. I'll believe it when I see it.
So with the extra room that you have, you sign Will Borgen to a 5-year deal, and you're gonna turn that around. You're gonna spin zone that into telling me you're just gonna go sign Jack Eichel. Yeah, okay. All right.
And look, it was very funny to read. I forget. I think it was LeBron. It was LeBron or Chris Johnston's column last week in the Athletic, where it was like NHL owners are weary of injecting too much money into the system in case of because they don't want to replicate what happened in the NBA the summer Kevin Durant went to the Warriors because too many players got paid. Oh no, players got paid what they were worth in the open market. What a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's so bad Mikko Rantanen might reset the salary, what the highest salary in the NHL. Oh, and then Connor McDavid will do it the year after that. And by then, it'll be time for Connor Bedard's first long extension and Macklin Celebrini.
These these conversations are always the worst because, like, every year, right? The argument is always, oh, the X player breaks highest salary ever. Yeah, yeah, that's how salaries work in sports. Yes,
The
because
next guy to get paid is the highest
the
guy.
cap keeps going up, inflation goes up. Like it's economics. Yes, players will continue to make more money
Over time.
as the cap goes up and as people just get paid more in general in society.
Yeah.
That is how salaries work. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Like, I understand there are people who are like, well, they're not worth that much money, but that's a different conversation. We're not talking about the value of a player. And you could argue there are no better value contracts in the NHL than the superstar ones because they've been the superstar wages in the NHL have been so artificially depressed over the last 10 years. Like, the fact that the NHL has a max where it's only like 15% of the salary cap is insane to me. Like, what do you mean Connor McDavid was only allowed to get like 13 and a half, 12 and a half million dollars for the 5 years, the most valuable 5 years of his NHL career? That's crazy to me. And I,
Players agreed to it
the NHL
somehow.
because the NHLPA only represents the biggest people. The down the line guys get screwed by the PA every single time we do this, and it's worse in baseball, especially baseball. It's definitely squeezed the middle class of player out, where you basically have to sign a prove it contract or you get the Juan Soto deal. There aren't really a lot of them in the middle. But the last thing I wanted to touch on this is that if Carolina does not extend Rantanen, then you start to get to a real question mark as far as the economics of the league, because this is a top 10 player in the sport. And if two separate organizations are like, I don't think so, what does that say? Like the Hurricanes were too cheap to pay Dougie Hamilton. So they did
Jake Ensel.
And Jake Ensel. Well, Jake Ensel, I think, was a little bit different. But again, they chose to do the private equity model of we're going to make the cheapest version of this possible. What was the cheapest version of Dougie Hamilton possible? It was Tony DeAngelo for a year and a half. Of he does offense. He's good at offense. And
Islanders legend Tony DeAngelo.
Oh man, hilarious. The Islanders are hilarious.
Hilarious franchise. Absolutely hilarious franchise. Also, I saw this tweet. I forgot who posted it. Lou Lamoriello is a month older than Joe Biden. I just want this is not a political statement in any way. This is just I'm reading out birthdays here. He is older than Joe Biden. Like, just take that for what it's worth.
I will never understand that generation's obsession with working literally till their death. Like, Lou, you have grandkids and great grandkids. Like, don't you want to like do things before you die as opposed to watching like, I don't know. Can I name an Islander? Simon Holmstrom forecheck. Like, couldn't you be doing something better with your time? You've only got so many years on this earth, and you're sitting in a three quarters full UBS arena on a Tuesday in December watching them play the Senators. Like, wouldn't you rather be on the couch with like your feet up by a fireplace?
And I know where Matt Barzal wants to be. Because Matt Barzal, I don't know if you saw
I
the
did
clip.
See that clip, yeah.
He is mouthing off. He's mouthing to his teammates like that UBS is empty and that this is a joke and like where is everybody? Like it's like that's not a good look. And like Matt Barzal's doing it, and that's a great franchise you got over there, Lou. I'll say that.
It's interesting because like again that speaks to a problem of.
And I'm not saying this as a Rangers fan, like as in general, it's like dog. Like if your best player is telling his teammate on the ice during a game, "Hey, there's nobody here. Like this is a joke." That's not good. I understand there is reasons behind that, right? You're playing Columbus, which they're a good team, but on a weeknight there was like a storm or snow or whatever, which is not going to exactly draw attention. But if fans will show up.
Winning cures all, man.
Crazy people will still show up. There's not a whole lot of people there, and Matt Barzal took notice of that. So, not good.
All right. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up and call it an episode. The Rangers are in a weird spot where logic would tell you want to probably trade away more than you bring in. Like, even if you want to go get JT Miller and it's not expensive, you still need to make commiserate moves of you're getting rid of Lindgren. You probably are going to want to trade Riley Smith. You probably are going to want to trade Jimmy Vesey, because you only get so many kicks at the can. And I understand the reticence, and I've gotten more than one person say to me, you have Adam Fox and Shesterkin. You're not going to punt on a season where you have those two, because anything can happen when you make the playoffs. That's true. I could also be holding a 2 and a 3 and maybe win at a hand of poker. I'm not going to bet all of the money I have on a 2 and a 3. I'm going to wait. I'm going to see what the river cards are. I'm going to wait and see as the hand develops before I start saying, okay, maybe I can win with this. You know, if they go on a nice run over the next month and they're in one of the 2 wild card spots, then we can have a different conversation. But I'll leave you with what I said 2-3 weeks ago. They have every capacity to make something happen here. They just haven't done it in yet this season. And look, 6-1-3 is not bad.
Yep.
It's going to take 3 more 6-1-3s to make the playoffs. Doing it once is nice. Doing it 4 times, that's asking a little much for a group that's been very mediocre.
The spin zone that is in my head that I'm now convincing myself of is that this is the 2012 LA Kings, where they look bad the entire season and then they show up in the playoffs and they just dominate everybody for no reason whatsoever. Like, everything just clicks at the exact perfect opportunity and they just decimate everybody when the Stanley Cup. Like, it's not going to happen, Nick. But for my spin zone, for my agenda, this is great, and this is what I now believe.
Can someone tell me what Mark Messier had for breakfast on January 27th of 1994? Can someone fact check that and find that for me? We might be able to find some parallels. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Liberty Blue. If you could be so kind before we wrap, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please give the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get notifications whenever new content goes out. I will have something later in the week looking into more stuff with Rempe's numbers, the penalties in and out of the lineup, because I do think that speaks to his value in the lineup. I'm not sure when I'll get it done. There's too much work to be done.